Now, to the thing I've been wanting to talk about, it's a bit of a, and I hope you don't get me wrong, because what I'm saying doesn't even make sense to myself, but I think, well, let me just say it. The thing is, I know that atheism is not like any way like a religion. There's no dogma, there's no rituals, there's nothing involved with it. But I also see this to be kind of a problem. And the reason is, for example, when we criticize religions for all kinds of reasons, like we say this is bad and that is bad and you shouldn't do this, we have nothing in a way to substitute. They say, oh, so what do you guys say about it? There's no like definitive answer, and I know there aren't any. But to give you examples of what I really mean is, for example, what about incest between consenting siblings? That's a topic. I mean, I personally couldn't say anything against it, but imagine walking up to some mom telling her, I don't know, theism is pretty bad, and I don't know, and they're like, oh, well, your belief system, they call it that, has nothing against incest or sex with animals or necrophilia or anything, I'm not saying all these things are okay.
Can I just pause you there? The reason it says nothing about that is because it isn't a belief system. It is simply a rejection of the idea that there is a God. Who wants to comment on this one first? Aaron.
Yeah, and not only that, but genetic bottleneck and disease, and what you would get out of childbirth from an incestuous marriage, as well as the various other dangers of having sex with dead people or animals or what have you. These are so obvious and so clear to so many people that nobody would integrate this as part of their belief system. Nobody would say that this is okay because it's indefensible on every level.
Can I just say
unless you read the Bible, in which case Lot and his daughters, they were all into that sort of...
well, he wasn't into it because they got him drunk and took advantage of him once his wife was conveniently removed from the equation.
Bravo. So drunken incest is okay in the Bible.
And if it's just Lot, there was also Noah, and of course there would have to have been incest with Adam and Eve and their offspring.
Can I just say something about the incest thing? I've mentioned this last week as well, and the argument is not an argument in my opinion, because who are we to tell people how they are supposed to have sex with each other? I mean, I know quite a few people that willingly do not want babies, and they how they call it when people like make themselves to not be pregnant or not get pregnant.
Okay, would you agree then that being that there are significant disease concerns, even in regular heterosexual, typical sorts of relationships, and that these risks are substantially increased when you get into the typical deviations that you're talking about, sex with sheep or incest or necrophilia or any of that? Do you believe that it would be wise then to inform people about the risks and the dangers of doing these sorts of things, and just educate them and leave it at that, and leave the opinion out of it, and leave the moral judgments out of it? Just talk about what a stupid thing it would do to do this, right? And here's why this would not be a good idea. Just let that be.
Yeah.
Let's make this point, please, if I may. You say that who are we to tell people what they can and can't do? Well, I don't think you would apply that to an issue close to my heart, paedophilia. So basically, we, as a society, do accept there are occasions when we can interfere with people's private lives and put limitations on it. It's just simply a matter of where we draw the line, isn't it? Or might you look like... Sorry, go on, Thunder.
It's, as with all of these things, it always boils down to this cost-benefit analysis, in that with sex with children, they are non-consenting adults. The question of sex between siblings, the incest between consenting siblings, is a sort of standard moral question in that, if they practice safe sex and don't have children, then the genetic thing's not a problem. But I mean, to an extent, it's a contrived question in that siblings overwhelmingly don't actually want to do that sort of thing. So
again,
it's a hypothetical that never basically arises or is observed not to arise.
I'm not sure about that, but I mean, even if it was very hypothetical to not arise, or there shouldn't be there is nothing you can say about it, actually. I mean, am I wrong about this?
There's nothing you can say about having sex with children, about whether that's right or wrong?
I didn't even bring up the pedophilia thing, about consenting siblings having sex with each other, having a relationship, let's just call it this, having a relationship, marrying, whatever they want to do. I mean, the argument against homophobic people who say homosexuals shouldn't be able to marry is that nobody, because they bring up the procreation argument and I don't know what. The procreation argument is not an argument, because who are we to impose law on them having to make children or whatever?
Okay, well, if I may, I think to very large extent, whatever people want to do in their bedroom is absolutely none of my business nor my concern. I would not support the illegalizing or legalizing. I wouldn't support writing laws to inhibit what people do in their bedrooms, even in these more extreme cases, some of them that you're talking about. Now, I think there are some limits that have to be drawn. I think that the sex with animals has to be illegal. I think that there has to be a limitation set for the protection of, as you said, unequal victims, which are being subjugated in the case of children and animals. And but otherwise, I mean, if you're not talking about an extreme health risk or victimizing somebody else, why would I care? So if you have a brother and sister that wanted to live together, I don't know that I would have a legal right against that. I think that they shouldn't be allowed to breed for obvious reasons. But is it a legal issue? I don't know. I mean, it's not my place to make that judgment.
The breeding thing would involve a new person, somebody who has no choice. So I'd say that goes out of the window. But Concordance has been trying to say something, and he's typing like mad. I'd love to hear his thoughts.
Concordance.
Yeah, so I think that you'll find that most people don't get their morality from the Bible. Even though they kind of vaguely think they do, they don't adhere to all of the scriptures equally. They sort of pick and choose. Homosexuality is wrong because it says in the Bible. Yeah, it says that right next to where it says don't eat shrimp. Right? It says that right next to where it says, don't wear two different types of fabrics. If people really lived biblically, it would be crazy. They would be thrown in a loony house. The kind of things that are in there are self-contradictory. They're anachronistic. So when we talk about how people decide on their morality, it has very little to do with what's actually written in that book and more to do with what the opinions have been of the people in charge of interpreting that scripture. And it's only been in the last couple hundred years that people have even been able to read the book. So, you're talking about a zeitgeist issue, and people say, aha, our morality is a direct result of the Ten Commandments and the things written in the Bible, and that's simply not evidently true. It's evidently not true. And I think if that's the kind of objections you're getting, that's the avenue you should go down, which is why don't you stone people who work on the Sabbath?
I'm not even talking about theists, honestly. I mean, I know that the morality out of their book is bogus, but the thing is, for example, I'm talking about my personal position. I have my views on certain things, but when I criticize them and substitute nothing for it, it seems like, it's...
let's be clear, too. Atheism is a non-belief. There are positive beliefs related to non-theistic traditions. So there are things like humanism and rationalism. The principled ethical rationalism is how I would describe my positive beliefs. not my negative beliefs, what I don't believe in. And there are actually, humanist conventions, and there are humanist doctrines. Now, they're not dogmatic because they're not based on revealed scripture, right? And that, I think, is the strength of all of these other categories of non-theistic positive beliefs, assertions, in that they are not based on irrevocable laws written a long time ago that dictate a morality that would actually contradict your internal personal conscience. Now, you've gotten, I think, into the incest thing, which is a very interesting topic. You seem a little too interested in it. But there are, of course, reasons why incest has been taboo in so many cultures. And it's non-Christian cultures, non-Abrahamic cultures have taboos against incest. And those taboos are culturally based.
I mean, I could even imagine that there's like a psychological argument against it. Like, I don't know, yes. I'm not an expert on this, but I guess like when two people grow up next to each other, they form some type of special bonding. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but take, for example, sex with animals. I mean, that's another one of those weird examples, I know, but there's nothing I could, from an atheistic point of view, say against it. Like,
but let's be real. For the large part, humans with their sexual preferences to keep it within the species.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Humans prefer to mate with other humans, not animals.
Yeah.
The normal, healthy way to be, of course, would be to seek sex with an equal. And that somebody, of course, would be of your same species. All right, it should be someone of your same, intellectual capacity as well.
What if
when you say that simply, what?
What if you're hung like a donkey?
When you're
why if?
When you talk about enforcing your morality on people, you got to remember that where this morality came from, that all these people are boasting from, is wherever the people sitting around the tribe get to write the laws. Before they had a full grasp of the concept of law, they would write down the way they wanted everybody to be, and they would say that God had ordered it, and that's what makes it their law, because they assert that. But the reason that they assert that is because in many cases, certainly not all of them, but there are some things we all agree upon, just that are natural. It should be that sex be between equals of some level. It should be that sex be with living people, with people of our species. These are accepted norms, by and large, and for very obvious reasons. Deviation from that, as I said, is insane in many cases, and yet, the religions of the world allow deviations sometimes in the manner that you're talking about.
But that's a cultural thing. There have been cultures where polygamy is accepted, right? And there are cultures where that is abhorrent. And it's a cultural thing. And the cultural norms often have very little to do with any kind of dogma. They have to do with the changing zeitgeist, the opposite of dogma, which is, we adapt to new conditions, new senses, and the group has some input on what we view as normal. And if sex with animals were part of the normal culture, and, a boy had to go out and do whatever to a female lion, as a test of manhood, that would be normal for that culture, right? And that's true for a lot of things.
Yeah, and this is probably the most important point that I could make on this, is when you talk about all these people who have their imaginary being that they're presenting as the authority that they perceive as being the source of these laws, and you say, well, what right do we have as atheists to enforce it? Well, okay, they don't have a God that's offering these laws. They never did. All of it was made up by people. All of it is always made up by people. Had religion never existed ever at all, we would be establishing laws to keep deviant behavior more or less in line with what everyone universally considers acceptable in this species or this culture in this day. That's just the way it is. Some people imagine that their rules or their culture has a priority because it's been dictated by some genie that they've dreamt up. but that doesn't make it real. There's no legitimacy to that claim.
Having said that,
I'm sorry, everyone. I have to interrupt. I finally found what I was fishing around for that had me giggling to myself. I read this a couple of days ago. There was a guy named George Spencer who was hanged by Puritans in New England for alleged sex with a pig. And their irrefutable proof of him having sex with a pig was, one, they didn't like him and he wasn't very religious. Two, he himself was very ugly to the point of almost being considered deformed, and the sow had given birth to a one-eyed piglet that was deformed, and he himself had a glass eye, so they thought that he had impregnated the sow. So the Puritans were really big on their knowledge of biology.
Didn't the sow give evidence in the trial?
Right. And at first they pressed him for a confession, and here, let me read the thing. They pressed him for a confession, and they needed to, let's see, okay, when the trial began, the magistrates knew the necessity of having 2 witnesses to the crime, so even they had some due process, right? They took a retracted confession that they had gotten from him as one witness, and then they used the stillborn, dead, deformed, one-eyed piglet as the second witness, so they hanged him.
When people tend to get up close and personal with gods, they tend to tell them to have sex with things. The one that springs to mind is the cult leader in Aaron's latest video, who was convicted of having sex with some girl when she was 7 or something. Yeah. And, there's another guy from a cult in, New Mexico, who was recently sentenced to 25 years or something in jail for a similar sort of thing. And, you ask yourself, if Muhammad had been around today, how would he have fared in saying that, no, actually, God wants me to do this with his, 9-year-old Aisha?
I know that Christians have no argument to present me because their morality is like as fucked up as it gets. Most religions actually have a really fucked up view about most things, but that's because of their books. But the thing that that strikes me as stupid is when a guy like William Lane Craig, because you mentioned him earlier, he always brings up this thing like, under atheism, all gloves are off, and whenever he says that, I think that most people think like this about atheism. They think that you have nothing to be objective about things, and I know it's not the case. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that we don't have anything to present, but what bothers me is that we don't actually have anything to push in front and say, we're not there yet. I guess that's the only thing that bothers me, is we're not there yet to present something against these things that are in zeitgeist morally unacceptable. So yeah, thank you.